Hey, I'm Ernie. We are here with Jim today, and Jim, what do we have put on today for your fifth wheel?
We put on a electric over hydraulic disc brake.
Awesome. And I think we went with the Hydrostar as well for your actuator on the inside.
Yes, we did.
Well, cool. Why don't we go ahead and take a look on here, and some of those advantages of that hydraulic brake system is just going to be a little bit of a smoother ride, especially if you do have that proportional brake controller. And since you got the RAM there, I think you're all kind of taken care of with that.
Right.
Going to make for a smoother ride. And we actually did end up hiding it here over to the side, which is pretty nice. So we're still leaving a lot of room here in the front compartment for you, Jim, which is great because, you know, space is limited, of course, in our fifth wheels. And so we actually have it mounted up here on the side. We ended up using those two brackets we mentioned earlier here just to kind of suspend it there off to the side. So are you liking that, just kind of getting out of the way?
Absolutely do, yeah.
Awesome.
It's out of the way,
cool.
And didn't take up any extra storage, so yeah, it was very good.
Sweet, yeah. So a lot of our internal components are going to be kind of hidden right now, a little hard to see. Of course, you do have your bleeder valve at the top here, which can be really nice. Now, Dave's already gone ahead, your installer, got this all prepped up, bled all that line for you. So nothing you're really going to have to do at the start here, but if you do start noticing a little bit of, a little bit of issue with it, you can go ahead and bleed those guys out. That way we're not having air sitting in our lines, and then our brakes are working how we want them to.
Sure.
So going to be a little hard to kind of see how all of our lines are being ran right now, but we can kind of bring ourselves to the corner here and we kind of see how it's actually going to our brakes.
All right.
So we actually have our hydraulic hoses coming through here on the side of our compartment for our propane, and that's what we were talking about, having that plastic bushing in place, because as we core that out, we don't want any sharp edges actually nicking or cutting that hose. Yeah. So that's why we went ahead and put that guy in there, giving you a little more protection, which can be great. And I know you said it before, a concern with yours was having any kind of hose or anything exposed, in an area. So this way we're tucking up on the inside. And so our line is basically coming down the side of our fifth wheel here, all the way, of course, back to our brakes, which is great. And I believe you went with the Kodiak, didn't you, for that brake action, which is great. So, and again, those hydraulic brakes are a little more responsive than your normal. You had the drum brakes before, you were saying, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, is that kind of what led you even to kind of go this route? You were having trouble with just kind of feeling that weight behind you?
No, it wasn't really trouble. Just had a trip last year to Tennessee and pulling the mountains, and I could tell the electric disc, drum brakes were getting a little spongy because they're getting warm.
Yeah.
And so I wanted something a little bit more efficient.
Yeah. And you could kind of feel that in the back of the truck, right? Yeah, kind of chugging on you. Awesome.
I wanted something that had better stopping power, and that's why we did this.
Sweet. And that's exactly what we're going to get, right? We're going to have that electric response, which is therefore we're going to turn that into our brake fluid, which is going to push into our brakes and then give us the braking power that we're looking for.
And this is what our line kit looks like when it's installed. We're looking at kind of the main junction block of it. You'll get a 4-way in your kit, and this is kind of the main spot where everything branches off to. You'll get a 20-foot main line in your kit, and that's this line here. You can see we looped around a little bit of the excess we had. This goes all the way up to the actuator located at the front. You'll also receive 2 of these smaller lines for connecting into your brakes, except for the ones that we're showing you guys here today are actually not the ones that come in the kit. And I did want to talk about that. I've installed this kit now quite a few times, and I would say maybe every time except for one, I've had to replace these lines here with ones that have a 90-degree fitting, so that way they are long enough to reach our caliper without the line contacting anything. And it's really important that these flexible lines don't contact anything. If this is rubbing up against metal or something, it'll rub through it and then you'll have a line leak. So besides this line though, I do really like this kit. Besides that they give you the straight one, I really like this kit because it simplifies your installation. It's much easier to run flexible line throughout your trailer than it is to run hard line. Hard line requires some special tools, and if you kink it, you can potentially damage it, and then you got to start over. It's a lot harder to damage these during the installation process. The main thing is that once these are installed, you make sure that they're not able to rub on anything that can wear through them. So since this is a tandem axle kit, beyond that main line and the little ones we got going to our caliper here, you're going to get 2 7-foot lines that will go across our axle for the calipers located on the other side. And you'll get a 3.5-foot line, and this is going to go from our T here to our T here for the further back axle. You can see you get a triple T for this side, so that way you can go across to the other side. And once again, we replace the straight 18-inch line that comes in the kit with that 90-degree for proper clearance. But I wanted to show you guys here so you see how everything is clearing. We have, currently we've got our wheels off the ground, so you can see they spin. And it's important to make sure that you've got enough travel, because since the wheels are off the ground, we know that our axle's as far down as it can possibly go here. So we know we're gonna meet our farthest travel, and then also when we go up, we're gonna be able to have it go up without it touching things. That's kind of what we're looking at here, is how this line is situated, so that way as it goes up and down, we can see that it's gonna stay away from those components that it may potentially touch. And then I'm gonna show you just a little trick. If we run down our hose to about right here, this is a little trick you guys can use at home if you're having difficulties finding a spot to put this line where it's potentially going to rub something. You can put some hosing around it, and then you can zip tie it. You don't want to zip tie directly to the line though. This plastic will wear through it, so it's important that you put some kind of protector on there. This hose kit is rated for enough pressure for both a drum hydraulic or disc hydraulic system. We're using it for our electric over hydraulic conversion, where we took off our old drum assemblies and converted them over to disc, and this just saves us a whole bunch of time. If you're running the physical line, it really does add a lot of time to your installation. And in my experience with these trailers that are going to the disc brake setups, you need a higher pressure for disc brakes to operate than with your drum brakes. And while those hard lines worked fine on those drum brakes setups, the 1600 PSI that's coming out of the actuator for these disc brakes here is really hard on those metal lines, on getting them to tighten down properly. I've just found that the fittings on the end of these flexible lines just seem to seal a lot better, and I'm not having to barrel down so hard to get these to be able to maintain proper sealing and handling the high pressure that we've got here. So I'm pretty impressed by that, because I've done quite a few of these, and every single time I do a hard line kit, I go back through here and I've got a couple of spots that leak, and I'm just tightening it so tight. And these are all a softer piece of metal, so even with line wrenches, I feel like we're almost getting to the point where we're gonna strip it with a line wrench. So I just get peace of mind with these flexible lines, knowing that when I go together, I'm probably gonna have no problems getting them to seal. And again, you can just route them so much more cleanly, usually than your hard line. And if you've got some excess, it's a little bit easier to kind of take care of that. The way we kind of just coiled up that excess right here. So now we're showing off the 20-foot mainline tandem axle kit today, but we do have these available in other length kits. So if you've got a shorter trailer, maybe an 18-foot, or a longer trailer like a 30-foot, you can get that mainline in different sizes to make sure you've got the appropriate length to go back to your axles. And we also offer this in a single, tandem, or triple axle kit, so you can make sure you got enough hoses to be able to install those. I would say though, in any kit that you get, check out and see if it comes with 18-inch straight lines. You really would probably want to consider getting these 90-degree ones to replace those in the kit. Just for me, it's mainly a peace of mind thing, because the 90-degree also really helps out a lot for the clearance here, not just because of the distance, but just because of the way the line is able to angle. It seems to flex kind of away from our components better than what a straight line would do, because with the straight lines, you gotta kind of come off one direction and wrap it around. If you go off this direction, you know you're potentially gonna hit the leaf, and then if you go off this way, you're further away. Which usually, that's kind of what we ran into. We were too far away with the distance. So it was just really not a good way to do it. So I highly recommend you look at these here. It's the Kodiak 18-inch 90-degree. It's gonna probably make your system a lot better with this. All right, to begin our installation, before you install your line kit, I would recommend having the components that connects that your line's going to connect together installed first. So your actuator at the front, make sure you get that installed, and get your brakes all swapped over from your electric to electric over hydraulic in the back. Get those rotor assemblies, all that installed. Once you've got all those components installed, then you can move on to putting your lines on. So we've got all that stuff set up, and we've got videos showing you how to install those components as well if you need assistance with that. Once you get them mounted up, we're going to start with our longest line that comes in the kit. It's 20 foot on this one here, and it just threads right into the back of our actuator here. And then we're going to start routing it towards the back. Now I did drill out a hole here in the side. I used a 7/8 drill bit to drill out this hole.
You can use a step bit. That's actually what I did use, was a step bit, and stepped it up to 7/8. That's a little bit more common for you to have one of those laying around. And then we were able to pass the line through there so we can make our way to the back. You'll also notice that there is a plastic grommet located here. We push that in there so that way with the hole that we drilled in the metal here isn't going to have any exposed sharp edges that can damage our hose. We sell these grommets here at eTrailer as well, so you can protect yours. Now this passes through this wall here, but on the other side of this wall, you may have components. So before you drill any holes, you should always check the other side to make sure. So let's just head over there so we can see what it looks like on the other side of the wall. So here we are on the other side. This was our propane tanks storage compartment right here. So you can see we pulled that propane tank out of here before we drilled, because if you drill into your propane tank, you're not going to be having a good time. So this is where our line goes through right there, and then it passes down. Included in our kit, you're going to get a bunch of clamps, and we use those clamps to secure it to the side of our frame as we route our line back towards our brake assemblies. So you can see those there. Now you do not get the screws, the self-tapping screw here, you do have to provide yourself. So just get yourself some small self-tapping screws so you can run those in. You can get that at your local hardware store. And we're just running it down the frame, making sure that our hose is not going to touch anything that could potentially wear through the hose. So we're just trying to avoid anything that could, could potentially rub on. And we want to put these about every foot to foot and a half. About 1.5 feet should be fine, to make sure that we don't have too much movement in our hose, because if there's too much flex and stuff, that hose can start to rub on things. So we want to continue routing it back, just following down the side of the frame here. Just keep on adding our clamps along the way. Keep on heading on down. And once we got back to this point here, we did have to shoot around to the underside of the frame, because you can see here we weren't going to be able to clear our stabilizer jacks that we've got here. So to clear the ground control, we kind of flip it around, and then we stay along the bottom here, heading back. And it just continues down the bottom. Once we get to our leaf spring hanger here, we just kind of assessed on how much extra line that we had left, because this line is going to go to a quad fitting, and that's located right here. This is our quad fitting. So this is that line from the front. We coiled it a little bit here to take up some of that excess, and then we go into that quad fitting here. When we coiled this, again, we want to avoid our hose being able to rub on anything. So you can see wherever we had a spot that we had to zip tie it, we made sure we put something on there to protect it. The clamps that come in the kit, they have a rubber coating already on them that protects your hose from any kind of damage and from movement and stuff, vibrations wearing through it. But if you just put a zip tie on this hose, this zip tie will wear through the hose. So we cut a piece of vacuum line, or if you've got some coolant hose or whatever you've got laying around, some hosing like this, you can cut that. And I just took a razor knife and I slid it down the hose, and then I could just spread it open and put it over my hose. And that way when I zip tie it, I'm putting that barrier layer in there that's going to kind of act like the rubber layer that's on the clamps that come in the kit. That'll protect our hose. And we did that up here as well. Any point that you're going to have two things that could rub together, you're going to protect that. And I put it on both this side of the hose here and on this side to prevent that from rubbing. So that's our main line hose that's going from that actuator all the way to the quad fitting here. So now that we've got our main line routed to our 4-way fitting here, we need to branch off to the rest of our system. So we'll start with just the caliper here, because we chose to put this 4-way fitting here pretty much straight up from where the closest caliper attachment fitting is. So this is where it attaches to our caliper here. So if you just go out and then go straight up, that's pretty much where we decided to attach our quad. And we just used some zip ties, just took a little screwdriver and poked through the bottom. Be careful when you're poking through. You potentially could have components up there, especially like water tanks and stuff. So that's why I used kind of a duller screwdriver, and I was real careful to make sure I wasn't going to puncture any tank. And then we just zip tied through there to secure that. So this shorter line here is actually this line that comes in your kit. I actually swapped it out with a different line. They're both 18-inch lines. You can see here, if we hold it up there, it's both 18-inch lines. But this one here, you can see it's straight on each side. And with that being straight, it just really limits your usability of it. Because if we were to put it like this way here, you can see that kind of pushes it off this way. We have potential then of it hitting on our leaf spring. So the other option would be, okay, well, we can put it, maybe coming off to the side or something, choose a different one of your 4-way here. But even if we were to go off on the side, just because we don't have that 90 degree, all this portion here can't flex until it gets a little bit past, a little bit further out there. So you're losing all that length of hose. And if you look down here, we would never reach our caliper without contacting our leaf spring there. So this hose just isn't going to work. And it's going to be like this on pretty much most trailers. Replace that one line with our 90 degree and attach to the 4-way, and the other end, the straight end here, attaches to our caliper. And we can see that it's clearing all of our components. We always want to make sure that when you tighten down your lines, when you get to the end, when you're getting towards the end of tightening it down, it usually grabs the fitting and it starts to twist your hose. So just kind of pay attention to that too, because we don't want our hose to be twisted in a way that's kind of forcing it into any component. So if that happens, just loosen it back up, kind of move your hose around a little bit and then tighten it back down to make sure that it's going to have like a nice resting position like this that avoids components. So that takes care of our little guy. We've got our main line there taken care of. We now have 2 more connections that we need to make here. You'll receive a medium-sized line that comes in your kit. That line is this one here, and it's going to go from this fitting to the other fitting that comes in our kit. You'll get 2 kind of semi-long lines. They're about 7 feet. Those are the ones that go across the axle to the other side. So we're going to start with this one here, and then we'll do the cross lines, just because the cross lines work basically the same coming out of the fitting. So if we take a look at this line here, this is kind of the second shortest line that comes in the kit. You got these little short ones that go to your caliper there that we just talked about, and this is the second shortest one. This one here is going to go from our fitting, and it needs to go to our other axle behind us. So we kind of did go towards the center a little bit here, take up some of that slack. We'd use the same little trick to protect our line, to secure it there, and then it just kind of wraps back in, and then we attach it to the 3-way fitting that comes in our kit back there. Our 3-way fitting has 2 outputs on it. One is for that 7-foot cross hose that goes to the other side, and then the other here is for that other short line that comes in your kit. And once again, we did have to change out that line to the 90 degree fitting line here in order to have the clearance we need from our leaf spring there. We do sell these 90 degree lines here at eTrailer. So for this particular setup, we had to replace 2 of the straight short lines with 2 of these 90 degree lines. All right, so all that we have left now is our cross lines here. You'll have one that comes out of the 3-way fitting that runs down across the axle, and it's the same way here on the other one out of the 4-way. It comes out and it runs across the axle. We secure it across the top with either, if we have a cross beam, then we'll use the cross beam with the clamps that come in our kit, because this is the best option if you can use it. But if we don't have a cross beam in this location, we can still use the zip ties with the hosing wrapped around our line to secure it, to get it across. Once we get across to the other side, you'll want to find a suitable location to mount another one of those clips that come in your kit onto the frame here that allows it to be in a natural kind of direction going down towards your caliper. We'll then just tighten this down into our caliper here. All right, and our line is going to do the exact same thing for that 3-way. So we've got that one over here, and then this one here I left loose to show you guys tightening it down. When you tighten these down, it's important to use the appropriate tool. Here I've got a 3/8 wrench, and here I've got a 3/8 line wrench. They look a little bit different. You can see this one here's got a little bit more surface area that kind of wraps around the opening compared to our regular wrench. These regular wrenches, you don't want to use this to fully tighten down your line. So our line here, you can see it just threads in there. Take a look at the end of it so you can see the end of the line. It is a double flared end there. That'll seal it right into the flared end there. So just poke that in there and thread the fitting right into it. And this is made of a softer metal. And it's made of a softer metal because we want these metal pieces to kind of form and seal to one another. So this 3/8 wrench here, if you were to just use this wrench, what most likely will happen is we will strip out our line here, and then you're gonna have a difficult time tightening it down and getting it loose again to repair it. There's very easy to damage your lines with this because of the tightening. And these have to be tightened down pretty tight to work on our trailer, usually tighter than what it is on your car. If you guys are used to working on your car at home, these usually have to be tighter because that actuator at the front for these disc brakes can go up to 1600 PSI. So when we're going to deadhead it, and we're going to make sure we test it to be able to handle that kind of pressure. So when I tighten this down, it's okay to start with this wrench if you want, but as soon as you feel it kind of hit the end, you don't want to use this guy anymore. It's time to move on to our line wrench so we don't damage the line. Now, when using your line wrench, you can see how it slides over the line there, and then we can line it up to tighten this down. And we're just going to snug this down. It's always a good idea to support your fittings if you can. So we're going to use an adjustable wrench here, just to give a little bit of support, so that way when we're tightening this, we don't accidentally damage it. And if you need line wrenches, you can get those here at eTrailer. We've got some available from Performance Tools. And that's all we're doing. We're just making sure we get this nice and snug. Just like that. If we were to use that regular wrench, there's a chance we would have gotten it tight enough, but there's also a good chance that we would have damaged the fitting. And if it wasn't tight enough and you damage your fitting there, you may not be able to get it tight enough even with a line wrench at that point, because you've kind of ruined the structure of it. So definitely make sure you get the appropriate one. We're using 3/8 sizes for those. You'll notice that you have a flat spot here. There's a flat spot just like that on the other side. Now, I'm not really a big fan of this. I wish they would have put their flat spots this way on these sides, because when you try to secure this to the bottom, it's now very difficult to put a wrench over this because you've got your flat sides covered up. So you can tighten these down before you secure it, but I find that's kind of difficult to make sure you get everything looking nice and routed where you want it. I find it easier to kind of figure out where you want your connections and then run your lines to those connections. So when tightening these down, you could use a wrench. I like using adjustables a lot of times, but you can see it's going to be real difficult to get that in there. So with these ones, what I did, I was just being real careful and slide my line wrench on there, kind of pull that down just a little bit to be able to get it on there. And then I'm just supporting it with my hand. So the palm of my hand's kind of bracing this side, and then my fingers are kind of bracing this side. And this way I can tighten it pretty tight, and without bending my lines or anything like that, without having to use a wrench on there. If you can't seem to hold it and you feel like your lines are going to start to bend, you don't want to do it that way. You'll have to probably kind of flex this down and get a wrench on there. It is a 1/2 inch size that you would use for those flat spots, which would work better than an adjustable if you're looking at this tight area here. So it's going to be the same for each of these. I've already got all those tightened down. So at this point now, just double check all of your lines, make sure that you're using your line wrench, and make sure they're all snug. Once we got them all snug, we can then bleed the brakes on our system. So you'll use some .3 brake fluid, and we'll meet back up at the actuator for bleeding the brakes. All right, guys, so we are back up here at our actuator now. We finished installing our line kit. Our actuator's all wired up. Our brakes have been converted over from the old drums to the caliper and disc set up. At this point, we just got to get all the air out of the system and get the lines fully bled full of brake fluid. We're going to be using .3 brake fluid for this. I've removed the cap up there, and I took a little napkin and I wrapped it around it to catch anything that I spill, because this is a pretty it's a pretty strong chemical that's inside of here, the brake fluid. It really likes to eat paint and stuff, so you want to try to avoid getting this on things. It's not the best to get on your skin either. It kind of dries you out a little bit, so just try to avoid that as well. So we're just going to top this up. I got a light up there shining down inside of it so I can see, so that way we try not to overfill it too much. And you're probably going to need a couple of these bottles here. That was a partially used bottle there, about half of it. And then we're going to open up the next one here, start filling this up. We got a total of 3 bottles here. We're probably going to use 2 completely and then partial of that third one, so just keep that in mind. These are about 12 ounce sizes. All right, we I can see the level there. We're almost all the way to the top. That's where we want to be. Your cap here, you can just leave that sitting right there. You don't want to put that back on. If we leave the cap on, we bleed them. This rubber seal in here, as it's sucking the fluid out, as we're kind of bleeding that out, the lower pressure that's in here from us pushing it down will actually suck this seal out of the cap. And it is kind of designed to extend out some, but if you suck it all the way out of there, you can damage the seal on the cap, and then you can get air in your system and stuff. So just leave that cap off of there to avoid damaging it. And now we're gonna have to enlist ourselves an assistant to help us bleed these brakes. Because one person, that'll be me, I'm gonna be back at the brake assembly to open up the bleeder. Your assistant though, he'll either need to be at the front of your trailer here to pull the breakaway switch pin, which would activate the actuator, or you can plug it into your vehicle. We're gonna be using a test box, which simulates a brake controller output. If you plug it into your vehicle, you can use the manual slide on your brake controller to activate this as well. So your assistant could be doing that. So we're gonna grab somebody here real quick to operate our test box, which acts like the brake controller. So we're back here at our brakes. We've got our assistant up there at the front. I've hooked up a hose on here. If you got a clear one, that's a little bit easier so you can see the fluid that's coming out of it, and it's just draining into a bottle we got over there. We just drilled a little hole in the top to funnel it into there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this bleeder up. I've got a 5/16 wrench here. I'm opening the bleeder, and then our assistant's gonna activate it. So go ahead, Shane. He activates it, and then it's pumping some fluid out. I'm gonna go ahead and close it off there. Okay, Shane. And we closed it off. We got some fluid out, but the reason why we closed it is because the pump up there moves a lot of fluid very fast. So after you have it open for a couple of seconds, you probably want to shut it off and check the level of the fluid inside of your actuator. If the actuator goes dry, you have to start this whole process all the way over. And all we're going to be doing is just repeating exactly what we did, but taking a break in between here and double checking that fluid level to make sure it stays topped up. We're just going to rinse and repeat this procedure until we get clean, clear fluid coming out of here with no bubbles inside of it. Okay, ready? So we can see there we got bubbles in it. It's coming out. That's looking pretty clean there. So we're going to go ahead and close it off. All right, so we got that closed. So we can double check our fluid level. If everything looks good there on the fluid level, we're going to move on to the next brake and just repeat that until we get clear fluid through. Once we get all clear fluid through, we'll probably come back to this one just one more time just to double check to make sure we got all the air out of it. All right, so we went around and we finished bleeding the brakes. After this one, we moved up to that one, then we moved across to the other side to bleed both of those. When starting bleeding your brakes, I do recommend starting at the furthest caliper away from your actuator at the front. So we've got the actuator stalled on the left front side, so we're on the right rear here, starting with this one. That just gets the majority of the lines bled with this first one here, and then you're just kind of taking up the last little bit going to each individual caliper. So yeah, we got all that done. At this point now, we are ready to check for any leaks that we may have. This is a very high pressure system, and the way to check for leaks is we're gonna pull the breakaway switch pin. That's gonna just deadhead our system, run it up to its max pressure, and we're gonna just check each fitting. So at each caliper, we're gonna check those, and at our 3-way and our 4-way T, we're gonna check those as well, and at the connection at the actuator. So I'm gonna go pull that pin, we'll grab our flashlight and just make sure we ain't got any leaks going on. All right, so we're back up here at the front. You guys are looking at the actuator. I'm pulling the breakaway switch pin now. The pump is activated, and we're looking right here at the fitting, getting real close up on it, making sure that there's no wet spots, that there's no drips. That's all good. We'll then move to the next fittings and just check those all the way back at every single one. All right, guys, with no leaks present, that pretty much finishes up our installation here. If you wanted to just verify it's working properly, you can pull that pin, and you should not be able to turn it when the system's activating, and then you should be able to turn it when it's not activating, just like now, we're not activating. We've already tested it. We know that it holds. So at this point, you just get your wheels back on, make sure you get those torqued down to the manufacturer's specifications, and you're ready to hit the road. All right, so we've gone ahead and hooked it up to our toter truck here that we use for moving around our trailers. We've got a brake controller installed on there, so as we pass on by here, we're gonna activate the brakes so that we can see that it's gonna stop. It should stop the whole truck with just the power of the brakes on our trailer. And there it is. Just the power of the brakes on our trailer was able to stop the truck. So that's pretty much what we're looking for. We've got plenty of power there available. Go ahead and take off again, and we'll just activate them one more time just to make sure everything's working properly with them.
And there we go. Trailer stops the truck like it's nothing.
And that completes our installation of Kodiak's flexible tandem axle hydraulic line kit on our 2018 Shasta Phoenix.